Welcome to Sparks of History. We are extremely honored and pleased to have with us today Rabbi Dovid Orlofsky. Rabbi Orlofsky is an acclaimed and highly popular speaker, educator, and writer. A graduate of Yeshiva Chofetz Chaim and the Presbyter of Yeshiva in Jerusalem, Rabbi Orlofsky is a former regional director for the National Council of Synagogue Youth and CSY. Rabbi Orlofsky, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it very much.
A pleasure.
Prayer, tefillah, especially in today's times. What should we be praying for, and how should we pray today, and how is our prayer different from that which it was before Simchat Torah, October 7th of this year?
Oh boy. So there's the absolute and there's the relative. Absolutely, what we were diving for beforehand is what we should be diving for now, but we probably weren't. I mean, ultimately, what are we davening for? We're davening as Shlomo, as Moshe, as David Melech says, what we're ultimately davening for is to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But unless we have tzrachim, unless we have needs, unless we have a situation, people don't daven. It's just the reality. You know, I've said that it's sort of a sad thing that if you see somebody suddenly show up in shul and they're davening with a lot of kavanah, you know, and they're putting their heart into it, and you say, what's going on? The answer is never. You know, I was just looking at my life and I thought, wow, everything is great. You know, my marriage is great, my kids are great, parnasa is great, everything's going great. I decided now I should put extra time into my ruchnistic life. Never. Someone's sick, someone's dead, someone's dying. I lost my money, my kids are off the derech, my marriage is falling apart. And then suddenly people feel like I have to daven. But that's only because I suddenly find myself in a situation where I have to now turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But ideally, I mean, when we come into Eretz Yisrael, right away, Moshe Rabbeinu tells us we're going to go to these two mountains, Har Gerizim and Har Ebal. And one is going to be the mountain of Bracha, and one is going to be the mountain of Klola. Why? Because when you come into Eretz Yisrael, you got a choice. There's Bracha and there's Klola, and you choose. Yeah? So, likewise, V'hayoyim Shemoah. If you keep the Torah, then you'll get all of these brachas, and if you don't, you'll get all these kolas. It's what's going to work for you. So there are certain people who brachas work for them. It's a wonderful thing. You know, they have bracha in their life, and it motivates them, it makes them happy, and it makes them want to work more on their avodas Hashem. And there are other people who, you know, vayishman yeshur v'yivat, that we have everything, and so who needs God? So God puts us in a position where we have to remember that God is there. I always say it would be a lot better if we would turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because everything's going great. We're so happy, and we can give shevach v'hadoya to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the great things in our lives. But instead, we know the reality of people are that when things go bad, they suddenly wake up. I haven't seen any statistics, but anecdotally, you know, since Simchas Torah, there has been a lot of people in Eretz Yisrael who did not feel a connection to Yiddishkeit, who do now. Why? Because unfortunately, tragedy brings us together. When bad things happen, suddenly we remember we need a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I mean, that was at the end of B'Shalach. Hayesh Hashem b'yakar beinu im ayin. Is God really with us or not? And suddenly a Amalek attacks, and we start screaming, Hashem, Hashem, come and save us. Because when you're in trouble, you know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I need a HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my life. Yeah, it's not an option anymore. I know I'm in a desperate state. And that's what Purim is, where, as the Gemara in Megillah describes, after the Churban, the Jews asked Yecheskel and Nevi, do we have to keep the Torah anymore? If a man divorces his wife, so she doesn't have any obligations to him anymore, God destroyed our home and sent us away. So we're on our own. So, okay, that's an interesting argument until Haman comes up and wants to kill all of you, and suddenly you have a changed perspective. So the answer is that ideally, if we would let good things motivate us, happy things, good things, brachas, then you have Hashem gives you the brachas and the clothes. You choose. Choose life. But if not, then tragedies come along to remind us that we need HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our life. And that's why since Simchas Torah, people have been, I'll never forget 9/11. It was either Time or Newsweek did a interview. They interviewed like anyone they considered to be a leader, of national organizations and things, people they thought were leadership roles. They asked them what they thought. One of them was the Novominsker Rebbe Zatzal, who was the head of the Aguda at the time. I remember his quote. His quote was, "The world will never be the same." Less than 2 months later, I was speaking in a girls' high school somewhere in America. I said, "What should I talk about?" They said, "Anything besides 9/11. Everyone's tired of hearing about it." So I said, the world was a completely different place for less than 2 months. And then it went back to the way it was. And that's what happens. People forget. And unfortunately, when you have something of such a tragedy, proof of the pudding is the Holocaust, right? After everything that we went through, the tremendous destruction, still people were like, they can shrug it off. To quote the congresswoman, you know what I mean? Something was done by some people. Some people did something. And then we move on, So the wake-up call that we experienced was such that we need to remember that we need HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our life, and that is ultimately the purpose of tefillah. Tefillah is to bring me close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's that opportunity. So that should be our focus. Our focus should be HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We need you. Now, we always need you, but it's when the Molech attacks, that's the time that we wake up and we say, oh my gosh, if we don't have HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're going
to why Tehillim? Why has Tehillim been the vehicle for thousands of years? What's the spiritual power of Tehillim beyond any other tefillah? What's in Tehillim that makes it so powerful? There's so many Tehillim groups now. I know, for example, my wife, she can't even keep track of all the Tehillim groups that she belongs to. And, there's papers all over the house with numbers of Tehillim. We get it. We understand that Tehillim obviously covers everything, but why? What's in Tehillim?
So the idea of a melech is a tricky proposition when you have a king, because a king has I'm not going to say absolute power, because obviously we have a constitutional monarchy because the Sanhedrin controls him and the Torah controls him. But a king has a lot of power. And that's what Shmuel tried to tell the people when they were asking for a king. But the Torah gives you the option for a king. What's the idea of a melech? So Rav Moshe Shapiro, who I had the schus to have a kesher with, I would not be so brazen as to call myself a Talmud. I know people who would tell me the Rav Moshe, I was not, but I was zeicha to have a kesher with him. Yeah, he had access to information that average people don't have. So as a story, my friend Menachem Nissel was driving him in England. He was there for a chasana, and he says he wants to go to Buckingham Palace. So he says, oh, you want to see the changing of the guard? He says, no, I just want to go to Buckingham Palace. It's okay. So he takes him to Buckingham Palace, and Rav Moshe is standing by the gate with his head turned to one side as if listening for a while. And he stands up and he looks at Menachem and he says, Ein harbe malchus po. There's not a lot of kingship here. So when I heard the story, I said, I could have told you that. Don't you read the newspapers? You know what I mean? You look at Harry and Meghan, you look at, Charles complaining about his dad. I'm like, of course not Malchus. So he says, no, the idea of a melech is for us to understand the malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a vehicle to bring it down. And that's the job of a melech is for us to be able to understand the malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There was an interesting book. I know really this is a history podcast, but one of the former presidents of Harvard who got the job for credentials and not DEI, wrote a book on Andrew Jackson. And I used to go when they used to be used bookstores. I can't find any anymore, but I'd buy the books on history. So it's called Andrew Jackson, a symbol of an era. And he posits that there are certain people who are bigger than who they are and what they do. They capture a essence of era. So Jacksonian democracy or Jeffersonian democracy or Elizabethan England, Victorian England. The person is bigger than them. They define an era. That's what a melech is supposed to be in Yahadus, that they capture the essence of what a person is all about. This is a deep cut for you. I don't know if you ever heard of a novel called Watership Down. It's fascinating, but one of the best written books ever. It's about rabbits. If you can get over that, it's okay. But at one point, this guy who basically saves a remnant of this warren that's going to be destroyed, and they go off someplace. He suddenly realizes that there are no does, and we're all going to die out. And he writes, everybody was probably aware of it, but it's the job of the chief rabbit to understand what everybody's feeling. I thought that was a brilliant way of expressing it. The melech is there to be, as the Rambam says, the leiv kol ha'am. Who is the melech? Who is malchus in Klal Yisrael? David HaMelech. David HaMelech writes Tehillim. Because as David HaMelech says, Va'ani tefillah si, I am tefillah. And therefore, everything that happened in his life was a tefillah. So this one's chasing him, trying to kill him. It's a kapitel tehillim. He recovers from an illness, a kapitel tehillim. Everything that happens in his life turns into a tefillah va'ani tefillah si. And in fact, that's why in Shmona Esrei, the juxtaposition of the brachas is Es Temach David Avdecha, and once you have David, Shema Kolenu. Then we have tefillah. David HaMelech was the one who could encapsulate what tefillah was all about, and Tehillim is an outpouring. And those of us who say Tehillim, right? Some people who join Tehillim groups, and then it's sort of like Daf Yomi, which is like a forced march. You know what I mean? But if you ever just lose yourself in Tehillim, you go to the Kaisel, you take yourself into Tehillim, and it's quiet, and you just say Tehillim, even if you don't know the words mean. Yeah, the words have a certain power to move you, because va'ani tefillah si, the tefillah is inside of it. So when we say Tehillim, we're taking. David HaMelech had a very hard life. Shlomo HaMelech had a great life, but Shlomo HaMelech David HaMelech had a very hard life. His father thought he was a mamzer, and that's why he was sent away with the sheep, and he wasn't allowed to stay with everyone else. So Shmuel Navi comes to anoint the king, and he looks at all the kids. He says, "Anybody else? Nope, nobody else. You sure nobody else? No, nobody else. Oh yeah, there's David. He said, bring him up. He's the melech. They thought he was a mamzer, and then they decided he's a Moavi and he's not Roy Lavalakal. And then his father was trying to kill him. And then, his kids rebel against him. And, he has a very hard life. And in between, he's fasting. He's living a very Spartan existence where he's just there for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's it. Acha sha'al t'meis Hashem. Just to be with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's trying. I remember hearing from Rabbi Chait, who was the Yeshiva of Chofetz Chaim in Israel. The Gemara says that David HaMelech would make a cheshbon in the morning where he was supposed to go as a king. You have a very full schedule. And his feet would just take him to the Beis Medrash. that's the way he was drawn to. He was drawn to Torah. He was drawn to tefillah. Even though as a king, he had important meetings to do and economic meetings and military meetings and things. But that's all he wanted to do. Shivti beveis Hashem kol yemei chayai, just to be with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So all of the essence of the life of David HaMelech were captured into Tehillim. In fact, there's a little bit of a interesting twist, and that is the Chazal say of the 10 levels of Dibur that came down to the world of speech, women got 9 of them. Women have 9 of the 10 levels of speech, and that means that they have communication skills. But it also means when it comes to tefillah, they understand tefillah more, and that's why the halachas of Shemona Esrei we learn out from Chana, because the women have more of a gefühl for this. And David was, to quote the former governor of California, a girly man in a sense. What does that mean? If you look at the Spheris, I'm getting a little Spheris savvy here, but the Ramban talks about it, so it's not too off the thing. Yeah. So the first 6 Spheris all represent parts of the human body. And Malchus represents Isha. And that's why Shabbos is not called Shabbos HaMelech, it's Shabbos Malkusa, the Shabbos Queen. Malchus is, and that's why the Magen David, the 6 points, represent the 6 spheres, and the little hexagon in the middle is Malchus. It takes from all the other ones and brings it together. So David HaMelech, who is Melech, Malchus, has a certain degree of femininity to it. He was the one who was able to compose the Sefer HaTfilah. We didn't have a sitter. We never had a sitter. Sitter started with the Anshe Knesset Gedola when they canonized the Shemona Esrei, the Birkas Hamazon, certain other brachas. Until then, it was freestyle. And the only Sefer of Tefillah that we had was Tehillim. When a Jew wanted to express his desire to get close to Kadosh Baruch Hu through words, Tehillim was the go-to. And that's where it came from.
There's obviously a tremendous amount of talk today about Achdut, and we're seeing perhaps an unprecedented level of Achdut on in certain areas, whether it's here in Israel, in Eretz Yisrael, or in Chutz La'aretz. Praying for Achdut, what does that mean? Well, what does it mean to pray for Achdut? What are we praying for when we pray for Achdut?
To put into the hearts of everyone. We can do that, right? When we daven for Klal Yisrael to do tshuva, so we're davening for everybody, that Hashem should, awaken inside of our hearts, right? You want to get people to have that desire. Hashivenu Hashem elecha v'nashuva. Hashem, bring us back. So the idea is that although everybody has free will, I remember when I was teaching in our Sameach. So at one point I was in my parashah shir, and I just went around the room. I said, "How did you guys get here?" And they all came from very secular backgrounds. I met someone in school. I met someone on the bus. Someone invited me for a Shabbos meal. And I said, it's amazing. Everyone here got a knock on the door. And based on that, you decided to come and learn in Israel. And someone said, what about the people who don't get a knock on the door? And I said, everyone gets a knock on the door. Some people choose not to answer it. And in fact, I have met people who said, I don't know, I've had like a dozen people come over and invite me for a Shabbos meal. Don't they get it? I don't want to go. So someone keeps knocking on the door, but they don't want to listen. So we say that when it comes, it should be receptive. I remember there were some guys in Yeshiva Chofetz Chaim who were going out to collect, and they asked the Rosh Yeshiva of Henach for a bracha that they should be matzliach. And he says, I can't give you a bracha that you'll be matzliach because people have bechira. They have free choice. They can choose to give you or not. But I give you a bracha that you should have chaim, so that people will like you. And as Itchy Lowenbrowns Zatzal said to me, who was he was the founder of AJOP, and he ran NZ's way in Baltimore for many years. He says, let's face it, you give money to people that you like. That's the ultimate. The cause, obviously, it should be a good cause, but there are a lot of good causes. But somebody who comes and you like the person, you give the person. We want people to be able to be receptive. A real person who doesn't want it won't have it. I heard a story. This is a story I heard. And the person says he knows the person involved, so I believe it. I always say I'm not Pesach Krona. I don't check out my stories. I hear something, I say it over. It's good enough for me. Anyway, so I won't say something that I know not to be true unless I tell you beforehand it's not true. Because there are certain stories that are out there that are very popular and they're just not true. But that's okay. I'll tell them anyway. But I will add a caveat that they're not true. But this fellow says he knows it. So this guy was driving on the Tel Aviv highway, and he sees a car stuck by the side of the road. So he pulls over, secular guy with his family. He says, "What's the problem?" Because I ran out of gas. He says, "Do you have a can?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I'll go get your gas." Now, on the highway, it's not as easy. This is not the Southern State Parkway where you have exits, every mile or so. You could drive for a long time till you find an exit. You got to drive all the way down, turn around, go to the gas station, fill it up, go all the way down, turn around, and come back to the guy and fill it up. So the guy says, "How much do I owe you?" He says, "Nothing. It's my mitzvah." He says, "I want to show you something." He says, "Come with me." And he goes to the back of his car, and he has a bumper sticker that says, "Stop the Haredim." So the guy shrugs. Okay. He says, "Help me take it off." He takes off the bumper sticker, they exchange numbers, and they're in touch. And he keeps telling them, "Come with your family for a Shabbos." He doesn't want to come, and he keeps pushing and pushing. But finally, he gets him to come for Simchas Torah. So he wasn't in the community when Hamas came in and killed everybody. He was at this guy's house in Yerushalayim. So there are other people who would have just, I know it myself. I've done nice things for people, and they does not stop them from saying nasty things, against religious people. So what we're davening for is, everyone should recognize it. It's like what we say in the Atar Kadosh in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, everybody should join together in one group. Because Baruch Hu should open our hearts that we should want to be together. And the irony of the period that was going on in Eretz Yisrael before this, where people were closing down streets and closing down businesses, and people wouldn't talk to each other, and just horrible fighting that was going on, and what do you call it? Protesting outside of a 100-year-old rabbi's house in Bnei Brak. Like just a horrible stuff. The what can I tell you? I grew up in America in the 60s and 70s. There was more or less a concept of live and let live. Even in America, they don't have that anymore. We're such a divided country. Everything is divided and hateful, and we have nothing in common. Nothing brings us together anymore. And Eretz Yisrael is the same thing. So we have an opportunity now for people to come together, and we're always stronger. I remember I was teaching in Ba'aloischa in Parsha, to the beginners in the Or Sameach. And I was doing the Rashi right at the beginning where it talks about the menorah. It says, Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't figure out how to make the menorah, and finally he just took the gold and threw it in the fire, and it came out. I said, I can't figure out what he couldn't figure out. I said, there's a place called the Machona Mikdash in the old city. They made a model of the menorah. I'm like, what couldn't Moshe Rabbeinu figure out? So one of the guys, he said to me, Rabbi, you already answered the question. I said, I did? He says, yeah, you said that the menorah represents unity. That's why it has to be made out of one solid piece. And that's why all of the candles point into the middle, and everything curves in, and it's supposed to represent Achdus. He understood how to make a physical menorah, but he didn't know how to bring the Jewish people together. I said, brilliant. And the answer was, when you throw it in the fire, that's when the menorah comes out. I'm old enough to remember the 6-Day War. I was a kid in elementary school, and the Israel had only been around for 19 years. It's not a very long time. And we were sure that it was going to be destroyed. I mean, the country was 9 miles wide. The Golan Heights were considered unconquerable. Egypt had the largest air force in the Middle East. The Jordanian Legion was the most highly trained army in the Middle East. And nobody was helping us. We were on our own, and the early reports that came in, Israel was being destroyed. And at that time, there was a level of achdus that I don't ever remember seeing before, where everybody came together. We're seeing a level of that today. I know organizations where all they do is sit all day and make tzitzis for soldiers. Soldiers are asking for tzitzis. People who've never worn tzitzis in their lives. It's an amazing thing. Because when you throw us in the fire, that's when you get the menorah. That's when you get that achdus. When people come together, it's unfortunate that it's tragedy that brings us together. I was speaking to a secular businessman in Chicago. He knew some stuff, although he didn't keep it. And he says to me, you know what the problem is, Rabbi? He says, most Jews have never heard of Sheva Brachos, but they all know how to say Kaddish. Because the one thing we Jews do well is mourn. I was speaking to a group of people who are here on Hebrew University on a program learning how to be afternoon Hebrew school teachers. And one of them said, he goes, I could talk about anything. I could talk about the holidays. I could talk about the laws. I don't get the kids' attention. You talk about the Holocaust, everyone sits up. There was a time when the federations were spending more money on Holocaust memorials than on Jewish education. Because the one thing we do well is mourn. It's a pity, but when there's tragedy, that's what brings people together. So, Halavai, it was for a bad reason, but hopefully it will come good. In the words of Benjamin Franklin, gentlemen, if we do not hang together, then we will surely hang separately.
There's just one final question and thought. There's a sense that we need a miracle. We need a nace to get out of a miracle to get out of the situation. Are we allowed to pray? Are we allowed to daven for miracles? What's allowed in terms of tefillah when you daven for something that's beyond nature, me'al hateva?
Absolutely. Absolutely you can. I mean, listen, halavai, you could do it without that. But when the people come to Moshe and say, listen, we're in the middle of the desert, we have no food, there's millions of us. Suggestions? By the way, there's no water. I don't know if you noticed, there's no water. We got millions of people here. I'm open to the ideas over here, but obviously you're going to have to come up with the miraculous solution. I don't think you suddenly have a catering truck that's pulling up that's going to take care of millions of people. So I hope you got something when their back is to the Yamsu, and that is the Misha Ana, Misha Ana Avosenu Al Yamsu, Hu Yanenu. The one who answered Yonah when he was inside of the giant fish. Okay, you're going to need a miracle to get out of this one. I hope you got an idea. So somebody once said a clever thing that he says, in Israel, we don't rely on miracles. We depend on them. And I remember during the Gulf War, when 39 missiles hit and blew up buildings. Only one person died as a result of the missile attacks. You know, it's an amazing thing. And they interviewed this one woman, and she said, "Would you say that these are miracles?" And she'd say, "No, things like this happen in Israel all the time." And I thought, what a brilliant quote. But yeah, look, when the doctors say there's no hope, there's no hope. So do people stop davening? No, they daven for a miracle. That's exactly what they're davening for. You know, that there should be a Kodesh Baruch Hu should change the teva. So, okay, if you could do that, you know, without that, you're not allowed to mention him anymore, but, you know, the famous Bill Cosby routine with Noah, you know, where he says, Noah, you know, those two hippopotamuses, they're both male. He says, yeah, well, you change one. He says, you know, I don't work that way, Noah. So we don't, if we can depend on ourselves, and that's why the cover that went on top of the Mishkan was made out of a waterproof skin to protect it from the rain, but it didn't rain. It was a cloud hovering over it. It didn't rain. So you do what you got to do. When Moshe Rabbeinu says, I can't put up the Mishkan, no one can put up the Mishkan, he goes, you do what you can do, and I'll do the rest. But you gotta, you know, you gotta try. Yeah. Yeah, every single day there are miracles. We rely on miracles to get through. It's just we take them all for granted. But yeah, absolutely. If you are in trouble, daven for a miracle. Right? That's the Rabbi who is it? Megamar. He was being chased by a pack of dogs, and he davened, and meat fell down from Shemayim, you know, and the dogs ate it and ran away. So he picks up what's left of the meat, and he takes it to the base medrash to find out if it's kosher. And they say, yeah, anything that comes from Shemayim, the mun, the ta, everything is kosher. Fell from Shemayim. So ask Rabbi Yitzchak Eisher share the yeshivas Slobodka. Miracle meat's fallen from the sky, and your question is, can you make it into hamburger? That's your question? Wouldn't you want to preserve this and show it to your children's children and say, look at this miracle meat? There's not, because you understand everything's a miracle. Mm-hmm. The fact that I make it through the day. Those of us who live here in Eretz Yisrael, right? So we're Americans. We don't have the gift. But Israelis, when you ask Israelis, how do you make it? You know, you're not making enough money to pay your bills. And then your children get married and you buy them an apartment. How in the world do you do it? These Simi flows. There's got to be some kind of trick. I haven't learned it. You know, I have relatives who moved here, you know, right after the 6-Day War. And they said, we finally married one of our kids off to an Israeli, but they won't tell us. They won't tell us the secret. I thought now that we're family, they'll let us in, you know. But yeah, of course. You know, when people are fighting for their lives, right? Pancreatic cancer, death sentence. Well, we keep davening. We are hoping for a miracle. That's all you can do. You just keep trying. So yeah, Mitzvah Hashem. Kodesh Baruch Hu should give us nisim and flows, and you know, b'derech hateva. I don't know how we win this war. I don't know how you do it. How do you track them all down? Where do you find them? You know, it's like, and the world's screaming at us and screaming and screaming. You know, so you know, I know how you eliminate it, but you put one foot in front of the other. I have a son-in-law that's his job in Gaza is taking out the people who were killed in that division. Terrible, terrible thing. And every time he goes in, the hearts stop. I mean, you know, we take it for granted that things aren't going to happen, you know. But you know, when they're dropping all these missiles, so we think, okay, you know, Iron Dome will shoot this down, this will take this over here. It's you're kidding. Talking about Nisim, apparently, this is what they say, Hezbollah was supposed to join with Hamas and was supposed to attack us from two fronts. And Hezbollah has real missiles, not these joke ones that Gaza has, you know, real powerful missiles. They take out the whole country. If the two of them would have attacked us at the same time, and then Hamas was going to make an uprising on Yehud and Shamra. You know how frightening that is? And Kodesh Baruch Hu didn't let that happen. So yeah, we need miracles just to get through the day. I remember during the second Intifada, someone in the media came to me. I don't know why. And he says, I feel like we're missing the story. I said, you sure are. You don't understand the amazing things that are taking place. There was a car bomb in Geula, an enormous car bomb. And the cops spotted it because the car was parked illegally in Geula. If a car was parked legally in Geula, that would make me suspicious. But it was parked illegally. There was this baby who was in a crib. A mother came in to get him in the morning and saw a bullet hole above his head in the crib. It fired into the place. There were so many. With all the attacks that were going on, there were so many amazing things that were taking place. And we missed the needs and the flows, but they were happening on a regular basis. And the more we appreciate them, so we should definitely daven for them, and we should look for them, and we should give thanks for them. So yeah, I pray for miracles.
Yeah, on that note, I think we'll conclude. We can go on and on, but Rabbi Orlofsky, thank you so much for your words of chizuk and inspiration. And indeed, we should see miracles happen speedily, our time, immediately.
Man, and that's to you, because I had a shir that I was giving that I wanted to stop, and Moshe Shapiro told me I couldn't. And I said, but I have too many things that I have to take care of. He said, okay, get rid of something else. But anyone who can give chizuk to Klal Yisrael, Bizman Hazeh, is mechuyev to do it. That was 10 years ago. And now, boy, do we need chizuk. So, yesh koyach to you that you do this, and hopefully people get chizuk, and we'll have that strength. And if we walk away and we daven a little more, and we have a little more bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we have a little more achdus, all the wonderful things that you're promoting, and Mitzvah Hashem and Klal Yisrael will be that much stronger.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Orlofsky. We appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
Pleasure.